Hello, everyone. Kevin Carrillo here, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast. My guest today is Mike Simpson, co-founder and CEO of Omura. Hello, Mike.
Hi, Kevin. How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you for having this interview.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for making time for me and the listeners today. Before we started recording, you said that you're in sunny Venice, and for those that are just listening, it is definitely sunny. It's a beautiful backdrop you got there. Is that your backyard?
It's our office courtyard. We've been very fortunate enough to have a nice corner office here in Venice. I'll show you around very quickly. We've got a beautiful courtyard that we used to have 20 people occupying the office in Venice, and now I come here every day by myself.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, again, for those just listening, that is a beautiful courtyard, lots of room, and it looks like you got it to yourself. So no distractions, man. We got you lasered in today, which is great.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, well, hey, for those listening, as I mentioned, we have Mike Simpson on. He's the CEO and co-founder of Omura. And Omura is a cannabis and CBD delivery platform which combines heat to burn technology with pre-filled whole flower, and they're called Flowersticks. And I think I said that wrong. It's heat, not burn technology. So
that's right.
Clarify that, yes, which is really the core of your business. So, Mike, before we get into Omura, let's talk first about you and your background. Tell us a little bit about your professional career and how you kind of got into the cannabis industry.
Thanks, Kevin. If you don't mind indulging me for a second, I'm going to just roll back a little bit. I studied an apprenticeship in instrumentation upon leaving school, and then worked on the oil rigs for 6 years. So while that's not relevant to anything, what it did mean is by the time I went back to college, I was on fire. I was literally like a coiled spring. I was so kind of passionate to get back into doing something I wanted to do. I fired through university. I did a couple of degrees in industrial design, getting the best marks possible, and just really passionate about finding just something I want to do in life, which was design. I started working with Lego, and I actually toured the world, getting inspiration to come up with new brands and concepts for Lego toys. I ended up starting a design studio in Tokyo for Lego, where we came up with Lego's #1 brand at the time as well. So that's kind of pre-everything background. And then Lego wanted to bring me back to Europe essentially and repatriate me, but I didn't want to leave Japan. I'd fallen in love, so I was just staying. So I spent a couple of years designing performance sneaker technology for Adidas and Nike from Tokyo before I met up with British American Tobacco. And then I started working with British American Tobacco in full capacity, designing and conceiving harm reduction technologies, essentially. And these are basically non-combustible products, including heat not burn technology and vaping technologies. So that's how I got into the tobacco world. It was very interesting. BAT asked me if I knew any science fiction writers because they wanted to know about the future of tobacco. And I'd worked with Sid Mead in a previous life with Lego, and he actually designed Aliens and Blade Runner and Tron movie sets. So he was basically a living legend and a visual futurist. So we predicted what the future of tobacco was going to be, and it was nothing about combustion. It was all about vaporization of one sort or another, which was quite shocking for the company that had employed me to give them this research, because it was all about nicotine inhalation essentially, as opposed to combustion. But as the years kind of moved on, we worked on many, many projects that involved the evolution of these technologies in order to bring these kind of inhalables to the market. I moved to California 8 years ago to research the cannabis industry on behalf of British American Tobacco. And I was looking at many different opportunities for potential acquisitions. And go for it. Sorry.
Just to pause you there. So first off, that's an amazing kind of journey and an amazing career that you had working for those large companies. I mean, starting at Lego, moving to you just say Tokyo, right? And being
That's right.
being there and then working for Nike and designing different prototypes of shoes and whatnot. And then you move to British American Tobacco Company. And that's where you started to look into the cannabis industry because of the interest from British American tobacco industry. So what was their interest specifically, and what year was this?
I'd say that it was around 2012, so it was around 8 years ago. And it was, there was a lot of traction in, legislation. There was, obviously a number of states had picked up, certainly medical medical cannabis, if not, starting towards recreational as well. So it was relatively early days. But I was looking into the e-cigarette industry and the cannabis industry, looking at all the major trends that were happening in there. Also looking at, specifically heat not burn products. There's the PAX is out there, and there was a Volcano by Stores and Bickle, and basically there was, as I unraveled it, there was, dozens and dozens of other heat not burn products in the market for cannabis, which I was basically I was buying them all, taking them apart. I was going to the UK every 3 months to deliver all of this new technology, and my job was to see if there was any application for the tobacco industry of these new technologies. But also throughout that process, it made me realize that heat not burn in the cannabis space was actually extremely desirable. There was millions of people are actually heat not burning their cannabis using these devices, because they have a preference for absorbing their cannabinoids from the vapor, basically.
Mm-hmm. And just for the audience that's listening, that's not familiar with that term, heat not burn technology, why don't you go ahead and explain that?
Okay, it's interesting. It's actually as simple as it sounds. When you burn something, it's combustion. You set fire to it, you produce smoke. When you heat something, it doesn't combust and you don't produce smoke. Both of these processes, though, do actually release the volatiles in the compound. In the case of tobacco, it releases the nicotine. In the case of cannabis, it releases the cannabinoids and terpenes. So essentially, you get the same bodily effect, but you don't have to have all the harmful compounds.
Right. It's almost like thinking about putting a direct flame on a bowl, right? And when you smoke it, you're not only inhaling and taking in the cannabinoids, as you mentioned, the terpenes, but you're also taking in the burned leaf, and all that added particles and stuff that get caught in your lungs and turn black basically within the bowl itself, right? So it's more of a clean kind of consumption.
That's exactly the case, Kevin. I mean, if you think about it, over the last 3, 4, 5,000 years, we only had the flame if we were lucky. And as technology's evolved, now we have batteries and electronics. So basically, the technology has just evolved now. We now know through science that we can extract those, the medicinal compounds without the necessity to set fire to it. So this is rapidly becoming a preferred way in not just in the cannabis industry, but also in the tobacco industry. Philip Morris launched a product called the IQOS, stands for I Quit Ordinary Smoking. It was launched in Japan when I was there, and it took 20% of the Japanese tobacco market. It's now been launched in 57 countries, and it was about to be launched in the US. So I knew that this heat not burn ritual was going to become a global trend in tobacco, and it just made all logical sense to me that this should be a product in the cannabis space as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no doubt that there's that desire in the cannabis industry, for sure. And with the vape crisis happening and whatnot, I mean, I'm surprised that Philip Morris and others moved to the space when it seemed like they were kind of pushing with the claims of how it was, damaging or it was dangerous and whatnot. So I mean, overall, are big tobacco companies, are they looking to the future for e-cigarettes and vape cartridges, or are they kind of sticking or betting on traditional smoking in the future?
No, I think big tobacco, they know it's literally a shrinking market for combustible products. So they've been actively getting involved with either one e-cigarettes. All the big tobacco companies have their own brands of e-cigarettes, whether they've developed them or they've acquired them. But all of the big tobacco companies as well also have heat not burn products. In the case of Philip Morris, I said they've got the IQOS. I also know that Philip Morris were converting a lot of their factory-made cigarette machines globally to make this IQOS product. So they're putting big big bucks behind this whole concept. They actually put in the broadsheets of the new UK newspapers a couple of years back an ad, 2-page ad saying, "We're trying to stop smoking." And that's the biggest cigarette company in the world promoting heat, not burn.
Right. No, absolutely. And so let's go back to your path. So you're working for a British American tobacco company, and then you're looking into these heat not excuse me, what is it? It's heat not burn technology devices. And so is that when the light bulb turns on and you're like, you know what, I need to patent something and start my own company that's specifically directed toward the cannabis industry?
It wasn't far off that. There was a kind of the stars were beginning to align. I'd researched the cannabis industry for so long and realized how an important space it was and how big an industry it was going to be. I also seen the importance of the plant itself. I seen there was a huge amount of new products coming out in edibles, topicals, sublinguals, everything out there. But there was actually a huge lack of innovation in the whole flower space. I seen that the IQOS was coming. And I was also attending all the ArcView events, so I was seeing all the new startup technologies as well. And there was nothing happening around that space, and it almost began to kind of it was bugging me. You know, I knew of this technology, and I knew there was a logical product that I essentially, with the background that I had, was able to create.
Hmm. And that's what I want to get into that now. So for our listeners, let's talk about the product itself, right? And it's very unique, the way in which it functions. So outside of the traditional vape pen, where you would just kind of pull whatever oil or distillate is in the device, y'all take a different approach. So I don't want to steal your thunder. Why don't you go ahead and explain to the audience kind of how the device works?
So let me go back a little step first. If you look at all of the existing heat not burn products on the market, whether it's be a Stozzle and Pickle product like the Crafty or Mighty, or whether it be the packs, you have to buy your flour, you have to grind your flour, you have to fill an oven, you choose a temperature, which can be confusing. You don't know how packed your oven should be, and then you use the same mouthpiece every time when you use it. And then you need to clean it out with a metal spatula or and a brush. And then every 10 or 15 times, you need to clean the device out with a rubbing alcohol because of the build of residues. Firstly, that's obviously a mind-blowing process. You know, some people call that ritual. I call it a process. But the fact that so many people were willing to do that obviously validifies the fact that it's a phenomenal method of consumption of the cannabinoids and terpenes. People love doing it if they're prepared to go through that process. But I knew that if I wanted to hit a mainstream target market, that I had to eliminate all of those pain points. So firstly, we have a stick which is pre-filled. You don't need to grind the flour. We do that already. The consumer buys the stick with an exact amount of flour in there. You don't need to select a temperature. You put it in the device straight away. You simply turn the device on, and then you use it for a 3-minute period. We've got a proprietary heat curve, which makes sure all the boiling points are hit for the cannabinoids. So you get all of the contents of the stick without any of the hassle. And at the end of the session, you simply take the stick out, which is biodegradable, compostable, and throw it in the trash. So there's no cleaning required whatsoever. In fact, the only user interaction is take a stick, turn it on, use it.
Wow. And so that's basically it. Pre-filled sticks. You stick it into the device, you hit the button, and is that when the timer goes off? Like you have 3 minutes when you turn it on, or can you pull it at any time?
You draw throughout the session. We designed the session not too dissimilar to a cigarette or a joint or existing kind of heat not burn products on the market. So it's a 3-minute session, and the user generally draws once every 15 seconds for around 3 seconds. So it's based on that structure of taking 12 draws over a 3-minute period.
Got you. And do y'all have, I mean, being a cannabis technology company, do y'all have any plans to launch an app in the future that integrates with the device?
I'd actually been sorely tempted to integrate an app, knowing that you can capture an awful lot of data about what products have been used, who's using what, where, and when. And I'd actually spent a few years developing apps for Disney in a parallel life. So I was very aware of the information technology or the Internet of Things capacity of integrating an app. But we're actually trying to break a new ritual here and a new product. So the idea of putting an app there as well, for me, was going to confuse things out the gate. We certainly have things on the horizon, if not the pipeline. But yeah, sorry, that's I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, no worries. I would imagine the data insights you would get would be super beneficial, not only for your perspective as a company, but also for the end user, like in terms of personalization and different things. So be interested to see and excited to see what y'all do in that space when you do.
It's a very interesting space. I actually think there's quite a lot of companies already exploring that area. So for the time being, we'll probably leave them to it. We'll focus on what we're good at, and that's been kind of whole flower experts. You know, you can only crack so many nuts at once.
Right, exactly. And well, hey, and just real basic question: what is the meaning behind Amora? What does that mean?
Uh, we have the belief of the Japanese meaning of precision and purity. I spent a lot of time in Japan, as I maybe mentioned. Firstly, it's the precision of the dose, the amount of flour that's in every single stick, and the exact heat that we take the flour to over an exact time period. And then the purity is of the whole flour. We only use 100% whole flour, no trim, no shake, only ever single strain whole flour. So for the aficionados out there, you can taste the flour perfectly. There's nothing being added in there.
And where are you sourcing that flour from?
We're sourcing the flour. Primarily, we're working with local brands in California. So the flour is of known brands. And it's a great thing about our business model is we're not a plant touching company. We leverage the market of our existing flour brands. They're well known in the market already. So, we don't need to source our own flour. We do actually have our own CBD brands under the Farm Bill. Hemp CBD is legal throughout the US. So we do have two of our own brands, Oriel and Libertine. And we source that hemp CBD from excellent manufacturers.
Got you. Well, let's talk about the differences and benefits when it comes to uh, first, vaping, heat not burn, right? Using that methodology or that technology versus just straight like burning of a flower. And then secondly, let's talk about the benefits of the consumption itself, right? Like how is it better for you to consume through vaping and not through other means like burning the flower directly?
Yeah, there's a few sides to this thing. I mean, firstly, it's healthier, obviously, to heat the flower than it is to burn it because it just releases the cannabinoids and the terpenes. There's only a small wisp of vapor is produced, as opposed to when you create smoke and there's a vast billowing cloud of smoke. So the other side to that is obviously it's an unhealthier method because there's a lot of known carcinogens in those compounds. But also when you breathe out smoke, you breathe out a huge cloud of smoke as well. Your lungs are only able to retain a certain amount. So when in that smoke that exits your body, there's clearly still a lot of cannabinoids and terpenes. So it's not a particularly efficacious method of consumption. When you use heat not burn, you only consume the cannabinoids and terpenes. And because of the size of it and the size of the particles, there's actually a high bioabsorbability. So you actually retain most of the vapor in your lungs. So it's actually almost twice as efficacious as smoking by using heat not burn. We only use a tiny small amount of flour in each of our flower sticks.
It's interesting because when I think of myself and when I've consumed through both methods, right? I feel like it's a different high. Like smoking through a vape pen, heat not burn, as opposed to just a direct lighter over a bowl. I just like the high is different. I can't really put my finger as to how or which is more extreme, but it is different. Do you have any explanation as to why?
Yeah, it's definitely different. I mean, when you set fire to the cannabis, it does seem to hit you kind of harder and faster. I think when you heat not burn it, the interesting thing is you still get the full entourage effect. You get all the cannabinoids and the terpenes still, so you still get the whole body high. The endocannabinoid system is being fully satisfied when you use heat not burn because you do get all of the cannabinoids off. But it's more of for me, it's more of a kind of a relaxed body overall wellness. I actually get more of a head high usually if I and faster if I combust it.
Yeah, I'd just be curious. I know that we wouldn't have an answer for this right now due to like different regulations in various states and whatnot, but I would be interested to see like the amount of users as a like for the heat not burn, method, as opposed to just traditional smoking out of your bong, or dabs or whatnot. Like, I feel like everybody's kind of all over the place, and people do it differently.
Mhm.
Not one's not bigger or more apparent than the other, I don't think.
It's really interesting. I think you're going to have traditionalists, and you're going to have people that love the ritual. You're going to always have people that love to roll a joint, or people that love to use a bong. That's never going to go away. Although that said, I think the new users are going to be less attracted to doing these kind of more troublesome rituals, in the same way that people used to smoke tobacco out of pipes or roll their own hand rolls. When the factory made cigarette came along, 99% of the market dropped those because it was just convenient to use this other method. But I think on top of that, certainly, I think a lot of people are going to move back to the whole flower, or people entering the industry want to really consume the whole flower because it's clearly very, very, it's the natural component. And I think going through these hygienic times that we're going through as well, the idea of having any product that you're going to have a puff, pass it on is becoming questionable now. So I actually think that the Omura product is very well positioned for these times, because it's a one shot stick. You get a single dose, and then you throw it in the trash afterwards. I also think that new users coming into the market at the moment, if you've if you stopped smoking, or two, if you've never smoked before, the idea of starting smoking, not just in this day and age, but in this kind of COVID environment as well, I think it's questionable whether people are going to start smoking now. So I think using the whole flower, it's natural, it's hygienic, it's convenient, it's heat not burn, it's healthier. It seems to be, for me, I think it's one of the ways forward.
Yeah, no, those are really good points. I mean, the traditionalist example that you gave, where there's some people that are gonna want to roll their joints and whatnot. There's some truth to that. It's almost like, but this new demographic that's entering the industry, right? They're younger. They're a little more. People are getting more health conscious, obviously, with COVID. And so it's interesting. It's almost like I'm thinking the analogy of like. Rolling joints is going to be the new, like, not knowing how to drive a stick. You know what I mean? Like, because I bet there's a lot of young kids that don't really know how to even roll. Because they're so used to the vapes and the e-cigs and this heat not burn delivery mechanisms.
Mm. No, I think that's a really nice observation. I totally respect all those methods, those rituals. I think the history and the heritage, I think it's fantastic. I just think as people move forward, and this whole industry moves forward, there needs to be more controllable, hygienic ways of doing things. We want to take the stoner out the basement. We want to take them out of the confines of their own home and hiding it away. And that was the way it evolved, because people weren't allowed to smoke. But now when people are allowed to consume cannabis, we'd like it to be in your handbag and in your pocket, and using it on the corner of the street or outside a restaurant or in a bar. We've got very low emissions from like a heat not burn product as well, so it's not very conspicuous. So we're trying to change the conversation essentially.
Yeah, and as there's more microscopes and scrutiny towards smoking in general, like cigarettes and nicotine, right? It's important that companies like Omura, like what y'all are doing, is being more health conscious, more hygienic, focused when it comes to creating these products. So you're right, because that is the future. People are starting to think about this stuff more and more. And on another note, what people are also thinking about is sustainability, right? So you mentioned with the sticks that you load into the actual device, they're biodegradable. So you just throw them away, and they're environmentally friendly.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's everyone's responsibility to have as sustainable a product as possible. We're trying to be as responsible as we can be. Our sticks are 100% rainforest friendly, compostable, biodegradable paper, and they only have 100% whole flower in there. So there's no guilt at all with the sticks. You can throw them away. And I think comparing that to like some of the vape pens where you throw the electronics and the batteries, or at least the plastic components away every time, I think we're in a very good spot. We're even trying to reduce the size of our packaging for our device, and we're doing what we can basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's important, exactly, to take that initiative, right? And so going back to your career in design, working for Lego, working for Nike, tell us about the importance or the impact that design has specifically in the cannabis industry.
I mean, it holds a lot. You can go back to those early rituals, and there's obviously very little design in that space outside of like rolling papers or like some of the obviously the paraphernalia that you would use. But you know, design as a concept is everything about what Omura is. It's all about the user experience, and we've designed that user experience. It's not just about the design of the devices. You know, we've actually used a very famous industrial designer called Michael Young, based out of Hong Kong, who's got a fantastic career. You should look him up afterwards. He's designed our devices, and that's why they look as beautiful as they do. But also our packaging as well. It's really clean, kind of Apple-esque packaging. But it's moreover, it's the whole user experience has been designed. We've considered it from the start. We really want to simplify it to make it mainstream. So we just designed that experience where somebody can simply pick up the device, put in a stick, and use it without having to think it through too much, without without having to try to worry about everything. Just simplify the experience through design.
Yeah, and I should have prefaced that question for the audience. I'm asking because of how sleek and beautiful the design of the Omura device is. You know, like as you mentioned, the designer is from where? From Asia.
He's actually an English guy from Newcastle originally, not too far from where I'm from, but he's been living in Hong Kong for many years. He's redesigned the Mini Moke. He designs furniture. Very famous product designer called Michael Young.
Michael Young, gotcha. Well, shout out to Michael. He did a great job. Well, hey, Mike, we've talked about a lot, and I want to give you the floor. Is there anything else that you want to cover before we sign off?
I think maybe, because I think it was one of the questions I thought I was going to get asked, was just about the importance of the election and the politics and what's happening in the cannabis space at the moment. I think, as we all see, the dominoes have been toppling for a number of years now. They're toppling at a faster rate than ever at this moment, as 5 states passed some measure of legalization over the last month. This is only going to accelerate. There's no turning back, clearly. The genie is out of the bottle. We're looking forward to a fantastic future which involves legal cannabis throughout not just the US, but the whole of the world.
Yeah, I don't mean to rush you. Let's talk about it, man. There's 5 states, right? I mean, that was huge. 4 of which went full adult use, and 1 that was adult and medical. And the states were South Dakota, Mississippi. I'm blanking. Of course, Arizona, New Jersey, and what was the other one?
Oh, you said South Dakota. I haven't got my map in front of me, but
Montana.
that's right. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yes. So yes, huge win for the industry, and lots of momentum. You can see that public support is growing more than ever, and I think it's at a tipping point where the stigma is finally being somewhat removed, right? I mean, I think that there's this kind of sense of empathy. People are empathy, excuse me, apathy. Like they don't care if you smoke or whatnot. You know what I mean? It's cannabis. So
Too many facets to this kind of this mentality. I think one part of it's been the people turning their back on the pharmaceutical industry and what's happened through opioids and all of that. That ridiculous situation. And I think people have realized that the war on drugs was a ridiculous exercise as well. And I think it's just generally the slow and unfolding understanding of the realities of life, that pharmaceutical companies are not always telling the truth, and the government doesn't always tell the truth. And as it turns out, the cannabis isn't actually a harmful plant. It's actually therapeutic and medicinal. So it's all of these things coming together. But we talk about the rate of change. There was actually supposed to be 11 states going to ballot, but 6 of them didn't make it to ballot because of COVID and they couldn't get the votes. So if you think in 2 years' time, there's going to be those other 6 and potentially another 10. So I'm estimating somewhere between 12 and 20 states on the ballot for some measure of legalization at the next ballot. That's more than the tipping point. It becomes embarrassing after that stage.
right. No. And I laugh when you talk about the war on drugs, because I saw a really funny tweet. I forget who put it out, but they said, "Congratulations to drugs for winning the war on drugs." I mean, but in a way, there's some truth to that, and to your point about these more and more states becoming legal. I think I just read today that another state, here it is, Rhode Island, lawmakers schedule marijuana legalization hearing for this week as leadership warms to reform. So that's that domino effect that we're going to see from these states, especially in the east, in northeast, with New Jersey, Rhode Island is obviously a neighboring state there, but also you've got Arizona, right? And they're going to make a huge impact in the Southwest. So we're going to start to see a lot more states open up to this, and it's going to be great.
Well, that's right. I think when you have a next door neighbour state who's legalized it, you're going to see a lot of tourism exiting your state to go to theirs, and you're just losing out on dollars there, basically. I think it's going to really help accelerate it.
So if you could predict the future, what do you think the most likely outcome will be? Do you think that reform is going to take place at the federal level first by the removing of the Schedule 1, or do you think that it's going to take the states over the next couple of years to eventually overturn that federal law?
I think nobody knows the answer to that. If I was a betting man, I wouldn't even like to bet on this one. It's ridiculous because everybody wants legalization who's in the industry, or everyone thinks they want legalization, whether that's decriminalization or full federal legalization. But then there's the descheduling of that, and then there's the entrance of the FDA, and then suddenly everything gets extremely scary. So I'm not entirely sure what we actually all do want. Be careful of what you wish for, essentially. So what I know we do have is probably a 2-year window where it's an opportunity where companies like my own can still enjoy freedom to operate an expanding market and getting a good groundswell of consumers before any potential radical kind of upheaval by the FDA, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about that. That once this does become federally legal, the guidelines and the regulations that are implemented will be new, right? And there'll be something that everybody will have to kind of navigate through. But then you also got the not the concern, but the inevitability of the large tobacco companies kind of stepping in also, and ultimately kind of owning a large part of the industry, right? And that's kind of been the thought over time.
Yeah, I think we all, sorry to jump in, I think we all expect that. If we looked at what happened in the e-cigarette industry, there was, 3 or 4 years ago, there was many players out there. People were mixing all their own liquids, their flavors, and the whole industry was, blossoming, one could say. But obviously there was some mistakes made, and, some of the liquid companies ended up inadvertently or intentionally advertising to younger people than they should have been, and basically the FDA got involved, and essentially the whole industry has been targeted. All the small players are now going to have to die out. All the vape lounges are closing. All the small companies are closing, and it's only going to be big tobacco essentially who owns those e-liquid brands that are going to be able to survive, because the FDA is imposing regulations which involve a large amount of testing basically of every single SKU in the market. So one would expect something not too dissimilar to happen in the cannabis industry. I seriously doubt people will be selling any product that looks like a gummy bear after that time. That obviously has some kind of appeal to children or or youth. So it's going to be very interesting what does actually happen over time, who's going to be the players that are going to be allowed to be involved, and how regulation actually changes the landscape.
The FDA regulation that you mentioned, is that specifically for the e-cigs within like big tobacco?
Well, it's not. It's not. It's basically the whole industry of e-cigarettes and e-liquids. Basically, the legislation where you need to have all of your SKUs, every single SKU needs to go through the FDA and be passed, and it's an expensive test basically. A lot of these companies maybe have 20, 30, 40, even 50 flavors, and each of these flavors are in different size bottles, and each of those bottles have different levels of nicotine. Suddenly, a company can have a few thousand SKUs if it costs you $100,000 to get the the approval for that product. Then we're talking tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's just not a plausible process for a small player. But the tobacco companies can afford to go through those regulations, and essentially they'll survive.
Sure. No, I understand that. And so with that regulation, was that implemented after or in response to the vape crisis?
It wasn't. It was actually already deeming regulation prior to that. There was a number of different groups, I believe, had been involved to probably lobby. I think the FDA is actually, using the best intentions. My worry is that it turns smokers back to smoking sometimes. and that's obviously the last thing that would want to happen. In other countries like the UK, it's actually encouraged the people to stop smoking and start using e-cigs instead because they're so much healthier.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm pressing on this issue a little bit because I'm just curious. Because I mean, obviously, on the hemp side, we're waiting for FDA consumer oversight of these products, right? And especially like the consumables and whatnot. And so, um, it's kind of, there's been unintended consequences without that oversight, because there have been bad actors that have been pushing product that, especially within the vape side, that has, what is it, vitamin E acetate and carcinogens and all different things that are really, really bad for you, so I think that on the flip side, the cannabis industry, the hemp side, they're begging for that oversight and that regulation.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. There's bad actors and there's people who look for loopholes, but essentially, the FDA is trying to protect people and do a good job. So I think it's going to be a little bit of push and pull, over the next, I don't know, 6 months, a couple of years. We're going to see, some big changes, some companies fold, and hopefully the right choice is made in the end.
Right, right. Well, I have one other kind of last question to ask you, and that is, we're hearing about different states going back into lockdowns, right? As more cases are emerging in the country for COVID. So, what would be your prediction in terms of, we saw this play out before, where we really saw consumer demand kind of skyrocket, right, for cannabis and hemp products. So and those businesses were deemed essential. So do we think we're going to see a second wave of that here in the next lockdown phase?
You might think so, but hopefully people learn from the last phase that delivery systems do exist, so you can still get things delivered to your door. Uh, these delivery companies are not going to fold; they're going to blossom in these kind of times. If you're going to consume indoors, use something discreet.
That's right. Yeah. And what is Amora planning to do in terms of being prepared for not only the next wave of lockdowns, but also in a post pandemic world?
It's interesting. I mean, this whole scenario is actually playing out very well for Omura, being more hygienic and healthier kind of product. So throughout this, we've pivoted. We haven't been as reliant on bricks and mortar. We're going more towards digital and delivery as well. So we're trying to kind of move with these times that have been imposed on us. But I actually think, probably to the earlier point and the whole point of the topic of heat not burn, I think the consumer is going to be more conscious about healthier choices of consumption. So for Omura, I believe that we're going to benefit hugely from this, and I think it's probably one of the best methods of consumption for cannabis moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, it's a really great product that y'all have, and I really appreciate you coming on today to explain more about the company, but also share your insights regarding the industry and the current state. So, Mike, thank you so much again. And where can people find y'all, like website, social media channels that you want to plug?
Yeah, we're on www.omura.com and Omura on Instagram as well. Please check us out there.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to include links to those platforms and those sites in the description box for the YouTube video. So, Mike, thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate it, man.
Kevin, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yes. And thank you all for listening. Bye.
Bye-bye.